Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Catherine Morency. I'm professor at Polytechnique Montréal. I do research on personal mobility, interactions between mode, and I also develop various tools, namely on travel surveys, and assist on development of various travel surveys across namely Quebec City, but Quebec province, but also for other purposes. So I will share my screen. Let me check that. And I'm freezing in this office that I borrowed. So, okay, share screen. Okay, yeah. Why can't I? Okay, voila. Getting there. Screen. And voila. That's something we've been doing for so long. Okay, so actually, the objective of what I'm going to present, I will just go back a few slides, yes, to show the process of developing the national survey. I have quite some experience in developing travel surveys, but of course, in this case, the challenging part is really the central part of the survey where we're trying to capture various things to assist all these research objectives that the wide MJ team has. So, and I have the privilege to collaborate with Hawaida. I just saw your camera. So thank you very much. And we're going to show you what we're up to right now. So just a few brief note on why we're doing this national survey, because we're trying to understand a lot of things. And of course, this comes with the challenge of doing a single survey to do all of this. I'm going to show some steps which are leading to design of the national survey because it's not complete yet. We're still in the pilot phase. So I will show you pieces of the pilot survey, so the scenarios we're testing and some preliminary results. So A1 has this objective of developing this state-of-the-art survey on transport poverty and transport-related social exclusion. It's a wide word and concept, so there's a lot of element that can come into play. So the main topics of interest, it's really about all the barriers and constraints that people can face when they try to reach their activities or access to some transportation options. Also, the outcomes in terms of well-being, it's not always that easy to grasp. All these concepts of satisfactions and the gaps between what people would like to do and what they actually do. Also, these I would call it the latent demand or what we're not necessarily observing correctly, because usually when we do a travel survey, we observe what people did. And these surveys are quite easy to design in terms of questions because we ask people, what did you do yesterday or in the previous days? In this case, we're trying to capture what they did and wouldn't want to do or what they couldn't do. And it's not always easy to understand why people don't do what they wish they could do. So it's all about this suppress and excess travel and also the aspiration. So there's a lot of ambition in all these concepts. And of course, from a survey design perspective, we know that, and you know, anyone who filled the survey knows that duration and the way the survey is designed can have a big impact on the how many people answer and the composition of the sample. So for designing this pilot survey, so we did various steps. So there was a big workshop in November in 2021 when a lot of people participated. And the idea was really to try to understand which concepts are most important. And we did brainstorming session, tried to capture the most important elements to capture as part of this national survey. And we also had a lot of interactions with the seat. So the seat, which is the table that Stephen referred to. And it's really useful for us and it brings a lot of questions and it changes the way we perceive a survey because as I say, it's not about what people do. It's more about how they perceive, what they would like to do. And it's really about choosing the right word, choosing the right perspective. So we do a lot of interaction with them. We ask them to not to fill a survey, but to give us some insight first on some of the questions we were thinking about, both to understand whether these were the right questions or they are asking in the right way. And are we capturing the features which would help us to understand all these barriers and perception people have? And also to make sure that we were not asking questions we shouldn't be asking, and trying to understand the trade-offs we need to make, because we are having a lot of ambition with what we're trying to measure, but at the same time we're still questioning people, and we need objective insight into the context. So we had multiple interactions. In a recent one, they were testing the pilot, and we got feedback again. So it's all about the question formulation and which pieces of information are the most critical for us to be able to do the best diagnosis we can about this question, which is quite central. So what we're doing right now, we're at the phase where we are testing, and people who are asked to fill this pilot survey, when they agree to participation, they actually agree to assist us do the final design. So they're providing a lot of comments. So it's actually not the descriptive and factual elements. It's something that is easier in the sense that we've been doing quite some time. But the central part, which is about perception and aspiration, this is a bit more tricky. And since we have, as I said, there's a lot of questions we could ask, and some of the MJ team had to go through the entire set of questions, which was really huge, and provide feedback. So we had to make some choices, and
Catherine, I'm not
scenarios.
sure. Yeah, Catherine.
Hello?
Yes, I think you might be having some bandwidth issues. Can you stop your video and see if that helps us? We've missed.
Where was I?
You were. I think you had
Here.
finished describing the 4 scenarios. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, so those who participated, I'm sorry, I'm like borrowing an office at the Transit Authority. Maybe they don't have enough money for a good bandwidth anymore. I don't know. So it's all about financing, I guess. So actually, what I was saying is that we're testing these scenarios, and the people who participate, they know that they agree to help us design. So that's changing also how they interact with us in terms of comments. And then at the end, we have questions on burden. So if I try to go through some of the construction, the scenario, so we only the central part. So it's only the perception aspiration sections would change. And we have groups of questions which are available in multiple scenarios, and those are only for one scenario. And the focus is on really safety concern, the issues faced when people use or access transportation options and opportunities, all these features of the transportation options with various modes being included, all the difficulties that can be faced to reach their activity and I would say make their days work, the satisfaction and ease of access to various destinations. So there's various ways. Some of these questions have overlap, but not in the same way. They're not asked the same way. And of course, I didn't put in the slide all the questions because there's so many questions in all the scenarios. But some of these scenarios, I wanted to show examples of questions. So there's a lot of things with sliders because it's all about, do I agree? Do you agree or not with these statements? And so about all I said, the access to opportunity, safety, cost of transport option, the travel conditions and difficulty faced. So I will not read these questions, but it's really about, no, do you think it's too costly? Is it too long for you? Are you concerned about the context when you travel, namely with respect to safety and the access to opportunities? And you see that we've tried to and I'm from Montreal, so my first language is French. So we had people help us with of course, the translation. But again, it's sometimes the concepts are not exactly similar. And with this seat is really useful in making sure that we use the good wording and the right way to ask question to make sure that actually we're trying to capture what the question is there for. So it's really about ability to reach activities based on the available opportunities and travel options. So again, so the third scenario is really about the safety, the perceptions of the transit features available in the neighborhood, and the impact of what is available on ability to participate to activities. And for the fourth scenario, then we included this home location dwelling, because when we were discussing about this survey, there's a lot of anchor points, we call them. So we can discuss about the home location, the neighborhood, the availability of transport option, the availability of opportunities, the possibility to reach employment or reach various types of activity. So it can become quite wide in terms of targeted questions, and that's why we decided to test these questions. So of course, this will go with a various burden, and this is really the objective of this pilot. When we have different people answering to different scenarios, it helps us understand if we will be getting similar response rate, because that's one of the responsibility of A1, making sure that we actually get respondent and we don't burden these respondents too much. So we've included questions at the end. These are questions we've tested in other surveys, and with the similar tool, we actually got a quite interesting assessment of the quality of the platform. And just to give you some figures on where we're at right now. So I looked at the numbers yesterday, and we stopped recruitment right now for various reasons, but we have more than 700 completed surveys. It's distributed across September. I'm sorry, it's in French, but at the right, you've got the difference between those who started the survey and those who completed the survey. We typically have something like 60 to 65% of people who click the link that will actually complete it. So it's similar to what we're getting with this specific survey. So you see the dropout. So this is something we're always looking at. So people will start, and even for the first part, you'll have people dropping out when you have to identify where you live, and then the feature of the household. Some trip is the part where we ask the main destination, so we understand the context of transportation, and then you've got the perception, and then the end. So we're really monitoring to see whether the scenarios will provide us with different things, because we're trying to see if maybe some questions or some part of the scenario will generate more dropouts. So this is to make sure that we can have a sample at the end. So currently we have a median duration of 25 minutes for all the scenarios combined, but you see some scenarios have longer duration, and this is what we need to check. And we have lower response rate for scenarios which have similar median duration. So this is also something we need to check, because we need to make sure that we're not generating dropouts with some of the questions. So when we look at the completed questionnaires for the 4 scenarios, we currently have enough information to dig into the relation between the content of the questions and some of the scenarios, which seems to be a bit harder for people to complete. I'm referring to the second and third scenarios, but I mean that we need to look into what kind of data it's providing, and also it's, as I say, it's a continuous trade-off between questions for which we would like to get answers and duration and the response rate. So here it's, as you know, every time we do a survey, people will come and say, well, you should ask this also, and you should also ask this, and you should also ask this. And if we want to add questions, we need to remove others, because it's always, we cannot go further. And the objective is really to reduce the duration, to bring it down to something like 20 minutes. So that's more or less what will be the task in the next weeks. And we had some comments. For instance, we have more than 200 comments for now. There are some of the things which many people indicate, so this will be included, and others are, we have to see how we can implement them. And of course, we got multiple feedback from the seat as well. So this is what will happen in the next week. So I would be ready for a question if that's like, maybe I should sharing and I don't have my video again, so maybe I try stopping sharing and putting back my video or something like this. Hello?
That's great, Catherine.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
So yeah,
I
we
thought I was
definitely have.
offline again.
No, we caught everything that time. Turning off the video worked perfectly. Um, uh, Happy for folks to. We can kind of um, allow people to unmute themselves now, and if you've got a question about the survey, just so that you know,
Please.
I'm going to be presenting a little bit on our sampling strategy next. But this is the time to ask Catherine any questions you have about the survey design, the content, the purpose, and so on.
Well, I can thank everyone who actually did the survey and provided feedback because it's not a simple survey, and we need the people to test it and see what they feel should be or shouldn't be asked. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks. And yeah, I'm sorry, Catherine, that we don't have questions for you today, but then I will ask a question to the audience, and maybe you can um, type in your answer to the question in the chat if you have a moment. But thinking about the kind of data that we're collecting, and assuming that the data that we're collecting, contains responses from the parts of the country that you're interested in, or that you're working in, or doing research about, I'd love to know. Just get some text in the chat that we'll record to tell us how you think you might uh, be a user of this survey. How might you use the survey? We're trying to come up with as many use cases as possible so that we can make sure that it's designed to meet those needs. And while you do that, so please go and enter that in the chat. And while you do that, we do have a question, Catherine. Colleen, do you want to ask it, or would you prefer I just read it?
Yeah, I was just concerned about literacy and how did you address that, and many people speaking different languages as well and who have difficulty navigating computer screens.
Well, that's something we had to discuss with the seat. And actually, of course, the web is not the easiest tool to interact with everyone. We know that. Currently, with the current way of doing the uh, the recruitment, I have to say, limits us to this web platform because of cost. But we are trying to see how we could recruit using other mechanism and assist people to fill the survey, because we know that's not. So we try to make the platform as easy as possible, that's for sure. Currently, we have the platform in 2 languages. It could be possible to implement other languages as long as it's the same alphabet. And it's not meeting accessibility requirement, because this is something I had to do for another platform, and it's I would say, depending on the cost, that's something we could do and make sure that it's easier. But this is certainly one of the challenge we will have in terms of recruitment, and we need to think about ways to assist. So this is a self, come on up, it's a self, I have a blank. Well, when you self-answer the survey, so you have to do it by yourself, but there's also ways to assist people. And this is something we discuss. How do we make sure that we can go and see groups of people and assist in the filling of the survey, so we can have a wider coverage of various types of population groups? But you're absolutely right. It will not be able to capture everyone. Steve, probably that's something we were going to discuss a bit after, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So thanks so much, Catherine. That's a great update, and I think people now have a pretty solid understanding, a pretty concrete understanding of the design process and the types of questions, although not all of the final questions that we're going to have in the survey. I wanted to take some time now to actually get into the nitty-gritty of who's going to participate in the survey and how.
Sorry,
And
Stephen. I
yeah,
I
before
did
I
have
do
a
that,
question.
yeah, I was just gonna invite you to ask your question, Luis.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
I thought you're moving on
Yeah.
to the next one. It's less of a technical question. It's like more like a broad question. Because we are in London, Ontario, and we're going through the mobility master plan, who's looking in 25 years of planning transportation systems for a city. And they just published the draft, and it's a draft evaluation framework, and equity is one of the principles. And the equity criteria is the indicator that they're measuring, and I'll put on the chat, is the number of people using the project who live in an area with an equity denied population. The number of people, and project means the road project, the infrastructure project. And I'm just trying to understand if that national transport survey is something that can help create a more meaningful and even useful indicator for this equity principle, because that one seems very vague to me and might even actually create more inequalities than it actually helps reduce them.
Yeah.
The way that is described.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And I'll first see if Catherine wanted to comment on that.
So the purpose of the national survey is to try to capture as more data as possible on various components that challenge people in their travel. And we have other groups working on indicator formulation, but I would have to agree that I'm not sure about the indicator you put in the chat. And I also see, and I would say I see another question in the chat that's related a bit. So this kind of survey is not meant to replace travel surveys, but we're trying to see what is missing in the travel surveys. And hopefully this will, so if I just take the example of suppress and excess travel, this is not something we can capture with travel surveys because this is things we don't measure. We're not able to see if people do what they want to do, or so that would help better understand the value of travel surveys by maybe providing correction factor, at least understand what we're not capturing. But hopefully that's the goal. I mean, we need to better understand barriers and limitations and gaps of various types of people. Now we're working on the tool from, if I talk about A1, but other groups are working on population and better understanding the concept of justice and equity. Hopefully, I guess that should be one of our goals.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, sorry, Steve, I was just going to ask Luis a question on that. I just want to clarify, Luis, like, do you mean like if a road is built near a community, are the people in that community who might be equity deserving not using that roadway, not benefiting from it? Is that kind of like, as an example, what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, because when it says the number of people using the project, there is no indication that we're actually measuring if the people are using the project is an equity denied group or not. It's just if it's in an area of an equity denied population. And again, it's a draft, so even the definition of what is the equity denied population, how many people we're talking, I'm guessing in every neighborhood that will be one or other group that could qualify as an equity denied population. So I don't see how meaningful that indicator can be. And I think, again, my hope is that the National Transport Survey, that would be a better understanding or even how to frame those evaluations, not just about the existing projects that might need renovations, but the new projects and how to actually measure if there's an improvement towards equity. Does that make sense? So my understanding is that the survey at least could help think us in better ways on how to frame those indicators.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the survey will definitely add information to the conversation and help inform future indicators. For the time being, the guidebook that we have on equity, the Transport Futures Equity Guidebook that we have on our website actually has a whole suite of indicators that at the time of writing, we thought were some of the better ones to be using to evaluate transportation projects. And that work is like continuously being updated because it's a very active research area. And actually next week, we have a whole session on the pitfalls and benefits of different types of equity indicators. So Alex Carner and Rafael Pereira will be here to discuss that. So stay tuned. The survey is tangentially going to contribute to this, but I think other work that we're doing will be more directly beneficial, and even work that I'm personally doing for Metrolinx right now on the regional transportation plan update, helping them think through equity metrics that they should be using to evaluate their transit plans. So a lot happening in this space. There's not going to be one metric that rules them all. Every metric will have its positives and its downsides. So I do think it's problematic if there's only one equity metric. It's a much more complex thing that won't ever be measured adequately using one simple measure. So food for thought there. But I think with that, I need to apologize for not introducing Hawaida Hassan, who answered your question. She's coming to us as a planner at the City of Edmonton, who's the co-chair and co-lead of the survey development work, kind of representing municipal interests and so on in that project. So Hawaida, thanks for chiming in, and I'm sorry I forgot to introduce you before. Lots of great stuff in the chat. Happy to see conversations occurring there. I'm going to try to keep us on track time-wise and move on next to just some updates and an opportunity for you to help us think through our sampling and recruitment methodologies for the national survey. So please, this is going to be another chance for you to get onto the Mentimeter in a minute after I describe the sampling. The original plan at the time of our funding and award from the government, from SSHRC, was that we proposed that we would use $80,000 of our budget to hire a panel company, like a market research company, to reach 20,000 respondents living in low-income households. And at the time, we weren't sure what the exact geographic scope would be. We thought it would mostly be people living in the biggest urban areas across the region. And because of the budget constraint, we knew that we were going to have to make some pretty tough decisions, as well as I should say that we knew that low-income people are not the only. I liked Luis's use of equity-denied individuals in the country, but using a survey methodology and using a market research company to do our data collection, we're quite limited on which variables we can sample on. So this was kind of our working assumption that we were going to have to sort through a lot of these issues around about now as we settle into making final decisions for sampling. Some challenges associated with that plan I've already spoken to, but also the costs of sampling have gone up over the last few years due to the inflation. We also have clear issues around representation, and if we go this route, we also had a question mark on whether or not we would have a control sample and so on. So lots of issues there. I'm in a position to share that the Mobilizing Justice Project is likely going to receive a large contribution to enhance the survey's representativeness throughout Canada. The details aren't public, but I really needed to, without saying too much, I needed to make you aware of a change in our plans that's likely occurring because of this additional money. And the first thing is that the money if we're successful and everything works out, it means that we'll have the ability to collect our survey in every CMA across the country. So all 41 census metropolitan areas across the country. And we'll be able to collect a minimum sample in each CMA so that kind of the average, so that we'll have a high high level of confidence on any one question at the CMA level. And we'll also have representative samples from the non-CMA areas for each province in the country. So all the people living in Manitoba who aren't in one of the CMAs, we would have another, representative sample for that population group. And overall, the funding is aimed at expanding our geographic scope. So we know we can now cover more or less the entire country with this funding, which is huge. And we'll also be able to expand our scope in terms of the target population. Now, we're still going to be using a panel company to collect this data. And based on our preliminary research, we understand that the panels that exist out there, and we'll be using multiple panels to get a large sample size across the country, have great representation in the low income space. So we're still going to have kind of the ability to say upfront, we're going to have great representation from low income households. And otherwise, I think the additional samples will be just a representative cross-section of the Canadian population at large. So moving forward, it looks like we will basically be maxing out on recruiting participants using the marketing panels that exist in this country. And we know that that's not going to cover equity deserving groups as well as we'd like to. And with this opportunity and the additional funding, it looks like there's going to be quite a big opportunity for Mobilizing Justice to survey more population groups, and especially those who are more at risk of being at transportation poverty, either they're belonging to other marginalized groups, racialized groups, newcomers, and so on. And we're kind of early days in figuring out alternative recruitment strategies and target populations that we can work with in order to have a higher degree of representation from these harder to reach groups who aren't necessarily going to be part of the panels or be able to answer a web survey. So with the rest of our time between now and 12:30, we want to get some feedback from the participants here today on which groups or communities should be our top priority, moving beyond low-income groups. We want to hear some ideas from you about alternative recruitment strategies that we can use. And then we also want a heads up on which partners or community organizations might be able to assist us with alternative recruitment strategies. Things like passing out invitations to clients as they come and use your social services. Things like allowing us to ask the survey in person following an English language class for newcomers in your community. And the door is really open to do this. We're trying to look at opportunities where we can kind of make some strategic partnerships with organizations across the country that can help us do this at, I will say at scale, but clearly this is going to be a much smaller scale than what we can do using our web survey and panel recruitments. So with that in mind, I would love for you and invite you to now go back to the Mentimeter. And this is a bit of a pickle of a question, I'll admit it. We've come up with a lot of the groups that are kind of, we know are likely to be at risk of transport poverty, face significant barriers in the transportation systems, have been denied justice in the transportation system, and so on. And what we'd like to just see is get a sense of whether or not there are kind of priority groups that clearly emerge, in your opinion, and or perhaps there won't be any clear priorities that come out. And the truth is that every group matters, and and in which case we might not be able to focus our attention so clearly based on the results of this poll, which is totally fine. You have the option to click your top 5, right? And just trying to get a sense. There does seem to be, and I think the survey, would change results if we asked it in a different room. So this is by no way kind of the being taken as truth or clear direction. We have a very skewed kind of representation here today, governments and academics primarily, right? Not a lot of community groups themselves here today. So, but still seeing an interest in people with disabilities coming out, newcomers and refugees, Indigenous persons, kind of a second tier on youth and older adults and the unhoused population, racialized individuals, and so on. So this is really useful feedback for us. It just kind of will help us think through how we make our strategic partnerships and what needs to happen in order to for us to achieve our goal of having a higher degree of representation amongst some of the very populations that we think are most at risk of transport poverty, but we might not be able to reach so easily, especially through panel recruitment. So this is fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I'll move on to the next question, and that is a simple question. I just wanted to make sure that we're not leaving anyone out. So please feel free just to type in any comments you have about the way I define the groups. Like, I know that there's a lot of diversity amongst different disability groups, mobility disabilities, blindness, vision disabilities, hearing, deafness, different types of mental health disabilities. So yeah, any other ideas around population groups that we should be prioritizing would be great. Just seeing shift workers coming in, remote and rural, remote communities, international students, young families. So feel free to leave these in. Drop caregivers, wonderful. Yeah, people doing long distance commuting, extreme commuting. I think carless households is a big one. So this is really great. I'm supposed to be able to hit the space bar, and AI is supposed to be able to automatically sort some of the responses as they're coming in. Let's see if this new feature works. So caregivers, I don't think it worked that well, but somewhat. So we've got some categories here coming out, which is great. Okay, so thanks very much for that, and we look forward to compiling this and sharing back with you what we heard in that question as well. All right, and here's where we need you to put on a bit of your creative thinking hats. And I mentioned a few examples of different ways that we can recruit respondents from these harder to reach population groups, but also wanting to get a sense of all of the experience and expertise in this room today on how they've seen surveys conducted with more targeted and specialized population groups, and what you think we should be considering. So I'm seeing lots of things here and some really specific advice also on ASL and QSL, and trying to um, uh, uh, support those with who are deaf or with vision disabilities. Collect the survey. Lots of community groups, some social media, employers came up early on. Let's try this magic space bar and see if it does anything for us today. And just to as I read that comment, I just wanted to ensure that we do have closed captioning on today, and that respondents are able to use that if they would like it. Jasmine, can you just confirm that in the chat? I know it's something we like to do. Okay, so community-based, homeless shelters, employers, face-to-face, religious organizations, centers, kind of intercepting in the transportation system, schools, social media, hosting kind of more interactive activities, walks and rides. So I think that grouping actually worked really well. So thanks very much for that. And that's going to give us lots of food for thought as we get into the next steps. And here's where I need a little bit of help. Please let us know the names of any specific organizations that you think we should be partnering with. And these could be community in your community. They can be small or large, but we kind of want some real examples of names of organizations based on your local knowledge and your knowledge of who you think we should be reaching out to. I mean, in a perfect world, there would be a national partner who can do this with us, across the country. I don't know how likely that is, but anything from provincial, municipal, community, or upwards. And I'm just going to leave this one open because I think it could take a minute or two for the responses to come in. I'm watching the responses and it's like I'm microwaving popcorn. When you only get 2 pops per second, it's time to, oh, there are 3 more just came in. So that's great. I just don't want to close it off because when I do, I think it might force you through to the next question. So let's give it 20 more seconds. People can can put one more answer in.
It doesn't force you on even.
Oh,
Even it doesn't force you on. It gives you the option still to submit the one you're working on.
oh, super. Okay. So here's thank you so much for that. And here's a maybe a tricky question, but one of the things that we're thinking about is the likelihood of being able to partner with organizations, municipalities, provinces, and ignoring costs. Let's assume that there's, that we can, that we've got the costs covered, or that we can find a way to pay for this. I'd like to know if we know that participants are far more likely to respond to an invitation to participate if it's coming on official letterhead on behalf of the government. We could get a response rate of about 9 or 10% if we're able to collect via a known organization, and that drops maybe to 4% or less if we try to recruit just cold calling from Mobilizing Justice itself. So would love to know if you think that your organization would send the invitations out yourself. Would they be able to help us with direct mail, or I don't want to call it junk mail, but the opposite of direct mail, bulk mail. I'm seeing a lot of it's complicated, and I think I was expecting that, and a few saying flat out no. So thanks for that. That does give us hope, actually, that we should be kind of opening processes, at least to get, easy ways for invitations to be spread via email listservs or mail outs and things like that. And then for folks who have some ideas in this space, we'd love to actually reach out and email you and invite you to further assist us with this. So your email won't be shared publicly, but you should have a screen where if you think you've got some leads for us and you want to contribute more to this opportunity, or contribute more to our ability to reach these harder to reach populations for recruitment, please do leave your email address, and we'll use that next steps to follow up. All right, we're going to come back to the survey or the Mentimeter at the very end of the day to answer a few kind of post-workshop questions. So feel free to leave it open. And I haven't been monitoring the chat, but I will stop here and open the floor for any questions or comments. I'm having a hard time finding my Zoom window, sorry. Okay, there it is. Okay, Robin is asking about goals in terms of when the survey ideally should come out. We have goals and we have constraints. I think it'll be the panel part of the survey. I think is now going to be collected in the first quarter of 2024. There's a lot of procurement things that need to happen to do something at this scale. And we've been advised by all involved that before we can actually start hiring a company or companies to do this work, it's going to take some time to get contracts in place and things like that. And we also have quite a significant amount of analysis to do of the scenarios that have come back. We know we need to slim down the survey. It's a bit too long right now. You know that there's some needs that aren't being met right now. So there's some design things that need to happen too. And I think combined, Q1 is when we're really likely to be collecting the data. So Mobot is suggesting it needs time to navigate those channels. Certainly not underestimating the legwork. Mobot, can you just let us know what city you're from in particular, just to get a sense? Okay, North Van. Thanks very much for that. Well, I think without any questions coming in, I just see Justin's comment that he squealed with delight, but we didn't get to hear you squealing. We only, it didn't happen if we don't hear it, Justin. Doesn't count. So
legitimately, this is like incredible, Stephen. I feel like a dam is like breaking with all of the stuff that you and your team have been doing, and I just want to say, like, on behalf of I think everyone who's like here listening to this, like, thank you so much for this. This is amazing.
Well, it's really wonderful to hear that, Justin. Much appreciated. And I'll just pass my thanks along to everyone who's part of MJ, who's making it possible, from the survey team to our partners who are helping open those doors in all of their organizations, to the community groups who are taking risks to work with us, and helping to advise this fairly institutionalized approach to making change. It's really just been everyone, and it's the beauty of the this intersectoral work that we're doing. I really think it's the right strategy and model in a lot of ways. So yeah, thanks for sharing your enthusiasm. It's really appreciated. Bill is asking about, can we see the spacebar version of different channels? The answer is yes. I'm just going to take a second to get there, and I'll share my screen again. And I think we'll, yeah, sorry. Bill, is this what you were hoping to see here?
I think it's the one that comes after this.
The specific names of organizations.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, sure. I don't know how AI will do this, but let's try.
That's sort of what I'm curious about.
Oh, okay. The technical. Yeah. I know that Mentimeter has a partnership with OpenAI, the people behind ChatGPT, and there's a back-end connection to ChatGPT, and that's how it's doing this. So community, organizations, yeah. This one's not great, I would say. Health Institute. So we used to have Matt Palm do all the summaries of these amazing questions that would come back in Mentimeter. Now we can just use AI to do it, which is pretty interesting. Good. All right, so it's 12:27. Thank you, Colleen, for sharing that last resource. We are saving the chat transcript to review everything. I want to thank everybody for their attention this morning. I want to thank you all for giving your suggestions to us. And, you might not have been expected to be used today. You thought you were maybe just going to be a passive audience, but it's such an opportunity for us to have all of you in the same room and to get your advice. And with 90 people, I hope that this Mentimeter route worked out. We didn't have time or capacity to do smaller group discussions today, but Hopefully you felt comfortable sharing your inputs here. And if you want to leave us with your email address, we'd like to be in touch with you and have more informal and longer form chats with you all. So thanks very much. Enjoy your lunch break, and we will be back